Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all our participants, dignitaries, and our esteemed guest speakers to the online panel discussion on Will the Farm Laws Reshape Agriculture Market by the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry. All participants will be muted to avoid any disturbances during the course of this session. To consume less bandwidth and have clarity, you are requested to stop video streaming at your end. Kindly post all your relevant queries in the chat section so that the same may be addressed. As we begin the session, may I request Mr. Rajiv Poddar, President, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to present the welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Poddar.
Thank you, Selvi. Respected speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome each one of you to this timely panel discussion on Will the New Farm Laws Reshape Agriculture Markets? A warm welcome and special thanks to our speakers of today, Mr. Sudhir Goyal, Mr. Yogesh Thorat, Mr. Govind Joshi, Mr. Chandrasekharji, for sparing their valuable time and being with us. Agriculture accounts for nearly 16% of India's GDP and employs more than 50% of the workforce. Agriculture sector has emerged as the star performer of India's pandemic hit economy by recording 3.4% growth during the first 2 quarters of 2021. In spite of this, farm activities operate under multiple challenges in production, processing, marketing, and trade. In furtherance of the initiative to double farmers' income, the government has announced a series of major reforms for agri markets. Amendment to the Essential Commodities Act, encouraging private markets in addition to APMCs to create one nation, one market, and a legal framework for contract farming will benefit all stakeholders in general and farmers in particular. They are expected to transform Indian agriculture by allowing more marketing freedom for growers and buyers alike. This will also boost food processing, especially in the SME sector. The government has passed suitable laws in this connection, and these laws are largely hailed as pro-farmer and are akin to the liberalization of the Indian economy in 1991. By their very nature, the three agricultural market reform laws are farmer-friendly, industry-friendly, and export-friendly. These laws are expected to increase the degree of marketing freedom for growers, ensure adequate availability of raw materials for processors, and high-quality agri-produce for exporters. The impact of the reform laws are being felt across the country and will potentially lead us to the Prime Minister's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, of self-reliant India. These steps are in the right direction to make Indian agriculture internationally competitive and to ensure the economic upliftment of the country's farmers. Further, it will provide an impetus for the agriculture sector, while in the long run, it will ensure food security and supply chain in a self-reliant manner. The reforms are expected to accelerate growth in the sector through private sector investing in building infrastructure and supply chains for farm produce in national and global markets. They are intended to help small farmers who don't have the means to either bargain for their produce to get a better price or invest in technology to improve the productivity of the farms. The legislation on contract farming will allow farmers to enter into a contract with agribusiness firms or large retailers on a pre-agreed prices of their produce. Will also help farmers of regions with surplus produce to get better prices and consumers of regions with shortages lower prices. It will promote the creation of farmer produce organization on a large scale and will help creating a farmer friendly environment for contract farming where small farmers and players can benefit. Competition is the best protector of stakeholders, whether it is consumers or the farmers. While the objectives of the reforms are laudable, there have been protests by farmers who are insisting on repealing of the law. The government is actively engaged in dialogue to sort out these issues and try and reach a consensus. Nonetheless, given the progressive nature of the reforms and the potential benefits that flow, IMC supports the new legislation. Our expert panel will share the in-depth knowledge of agribusiness and how these reforms will reshape agriculture markets. Once again, I welcome you all to this interesting event. I am sure you'll go back enriched. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poddar. We now request Mr. Ashish Barwale, Chairman, Agriculture and Food Processing Committee, IMC, to present the theme address. Over to you, Mr. Barwale.
Thank you, Shelby. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all our outstanding speakers for the day. For a warm welcome to our participants, our member colleagues from the chamber, and all who have joined in to discuss and listen to the topic of today. The farm law reforms, which the government initiated in June of this year, or of last year, in fact, that is June of 2020, have been in the news lately with a lot of farmer agitation and communication being received by the farming group to the government. And we at the Agribusiness Committee of the IMC felt it would be a interesting topic to discuss with panelists and also with participants interested in the subject. I would like to talk a little bit about the basic three reforms that have been proposed by the government and also introduce our panelists. They are subject matter specialists and represent different groups who are impacted by the laws. And leave the discussions to their expert opinions. And I'm sure that we will have a very hearty discussion on both the benefits and the future outlook for these laws. So what is the government trying to do with these laws? Many believe that it is the 1991 moment for agriculture reform. But I would just like to describe what the three laws are or the reforms that have been proposed are. The first reform that has been proposed is the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Bill. What this bill attempts to do is it limits the APMC's oversight and jurisdiction to the APMC market yard. In traditional APMC laws, the jurisdiction of the APMC was around the entire marketing wherever that may happen in the state. But now the government has mandated that the APMC will only be allowed to exert its influence and its restrictions in the market yard itself. So outside of the market yard, entities are free to transact in agricultural produce in what would be referred to as the trade area. Thus, a trade area is where trade happens that is not already under the APMC. The second reform that the government has proposed is in the Essential Commodities Amendment Bill. What this stipulates is that it removes the arbitrariness and unpredictability in notifying stock limits by linking it to a transparent, rule-based system of price triggers. So what does this mean? This means that, for example, horticultural produce, when we speak about horticultural produce, the stocking limits can only be invoked if there is 100% increase in the retail price and 50% increase in the retail price of non-perishable agricultural foodstuffs. So the traditional system was an arbitrary system under the Essential Commodities Act, which enabled setting up price limits. And of course, removing this limit, we will discuss, in our panel discussion, what the impact of that would be. The third and final reform that the government has proposed is under the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Bill. This is in other words, this is more, easily referred to as the contract farming bill, and it aims to provide a framework for written agreements between farmers and sponsors without mandating them. It allows sponsors to engage with farmers via written contracts if they choose to use such contracts. So this is popularly known as a contract farming reform. And again, we hope to discuss more about the pros and cons of such contracts in our discussion. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our panel. We are very excited and fortunate to have them discuss this important topic. Dr. Sudhir Goyal, the first panelist, is amongst the most respected government officials who has served the state of Maharashtra. He retired as the Chief Secretary of Agriculture and has a rich experience in both policy formulations and policy implementations related specifically to agriculture. We are proud to also have him as the Vice Chairman of the Agriculture and Food Processing Committee at the IMC, and we are greatly looking forward to his views on the proposed reforms. We were to have Mr. Somnath Chatterjee, the Head of Procurement and Logistics at ITC Foods, join the panel, but unfortunately, due to his poor health, he is unable to attend. We hope for his speedy recovery and wish him the best. We have Shri Govind Joshi ji. Shri Joshi ji is a very senior leader of the Shetkari Sangatna. Shetkari Sangatna, as you may know, is a very progressive farmer organization in Maharashtra, started by the late Shri Sharad Joshi a few decades back. We are fortunate to have Shri Joshi ji representing the interest of progressive farmers in the webinar today, and we welcome him heartily. Shri Yogesh Thorat is a popular young leader representing the Federation of Maharashtra FPOs. FPOs are a key component of the farm laws and provide strengths to particularly smallholders, especially when it relates to marketing. We warmly welcome him for sharing his views on behalf of the Maha FPO and also the smallholder farmers. And finally, we have our very own Shri Dr. Chandrasekhar. Chandrasekhar ji, as you very well know, is a policy expert and a very valued voice on agriculture subject matters. And many of you have read his articles in the public press and also in journals. He is known, of course, not only in India, but across the world in commodity forums, agricultural conferences, and policy platforms. He is the director of the ERTF at the IMC, and we are delighted to have him on this panel to share his thoughts on the agri reforms.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for your participation on this important subject matter. It's a timely seminar which we hope will add value and clear some doubts that you might have in your mind about the farm reforms. We hope that these reforms can form a base for the liberalization of agriculture and providing economic freedom to farmers who have so far been denied such development freedom to further their economic standings. Thank you once again, and wishing everyone a good seminar.
Thank you, Mr. Barvale. And now, as we move on to the panel discussion, I request our moderator for the session, Mr. Subbarao Appamane, Senior Vice President, Corporate Communication, MECO, to initiate the discussion. Over to you, Mr. Appamane.
Thank you, Selvi. Good afternoon, and a warm welcome to all the panelists again. To begin with, I think what we would do is we would request each of the panelists to share for about 5 to 6 minutes their overall thought about these reforms. We'll start with that, and following that, we will take up whatever the concerns that have been expressed by certain sections of the farming community, and how do we address these concerns. So may I request now Dr. Sudhir Goyal to share his thoughts, overall thoughts about the reforms.
Yeah, thanks, Subbarao. Now, most important point of today's discussion is that whether the farm laws are going to reshape Indian agricultural markets. The answer is very simple. Yes, it will reshape, but the question is whether for good or for the bad. Now, there is one school of thought which says that this is going to be the death warrant of Indian agriculture. And the other school of thought says that it is going to be the agricultural revolution. Now, why is it so that there is so much of diversion in two kinds of approaches to the same kind of farm laws, which have been so lucidly described by Mr. Poddar, our chairman, and Mr. Barwani? Now, first part of the farm bill is that, yes, simply it says that a buyer is now allowed to buy the produce outside APMC. Now, it generates two kinds of reactions. The one school of thought says that since the farmers are weak, they are 85% small and marginal, and they will not be able to see the onslaught of the market outside APMC. APMCs are regulated, their interests are being preserved there. And in addition to that, the government is always there to buy the produce at MSP. And therefore, the farming community should not be left to the market sharks, the way they put it. And mostly they keep it from the point of view of corporates, as if the corporates are the only market players, while there are producers, there are retailers, there are SMEs, there is a whole lot of spectrum of buyers other than corporates, which are there outside APMC markets. The other side, the government says that the increased competition outside and inside APMCs for multiple number of buyers is going to be beneficial for the farmers for a better price discovery and also the price realization. The reality lies somewhere in between. None of these two would happen automatically. Wherever such kind of reforms have been introduced, whether it was in 16 of the states which accepted part of the Model Act, which was introduced in 2003, you will find that in Delhi in 2010, the fruits and vegetables were taken out of APMC, nothing happened. Azadpur Mandi remains the same. And in case of, we find that in Maharashtra, when these reforms were introduced, the government proactively worked, and to an extent of 10 to 15%, some estimates at 20%, that is the kind of produce which was now traded outside APMCs in a big way. MahaFPC, Mr. Yogesh Thorat is there with an excellent work, and there has been a change. So the short answer to the question is, in what way we are going to do it, is that all the stakeholders will have to really work very hard to make it happen. On the side of the farmers will have to organize, they will have to get their capacity build up, they will have to face the market, and they will have to get their grades of the produce acceptable to the market, and that is how they will reach to the market. On the other hand, the marketeers will have to think a new way of doing the market. As I always say, that the farm laws are there where your rules have changed, but the market players remain the same. They will have to really think differently for capturing this market. And in between, there has to be a number of farm service providers in terms of credit, in terms of insurance, in terms of technology, to connect the market and the farmers together. Now that is regarding the farm laws number one. Other farm law says that a contract farming agreement is possible, and the buyers can have a contractual agreement with the farmers. Very simple. Nobody should have any kind of an objection to this. But what we find that the one school of thought says that no, it's going to be an arrangement between the two unequals. The farmers are very weak, and those who are going to be entering into a contractual agreement are very strong. Most of them will be big corporates, and then this will be a kind of a system which will be exploitative. Now, one forgets to understand is that there is no compulsion for enter into any kind of such agreements. The market is open. The farmer will have both the choices, whether to go to the APMCs, whether to go to the market outside APMCs, whether to enter into a contract farming agreement, whether they will have to farm their own FPOs and go to the market. The choice are going to be a very large in number. So in that case, such kind of a contractual agreement is not being enforced. And then if there is any problem, there is a system of dispute settlement, there is a system of arbitration, and all that is being provided. Obviously, it can be improved upon as the time goes on. That is regarding farm laws number 2, that is in terms of contract farming agreement. And these agreements can go in a manner which will connect the farmers into to the market in a localized value chain where all the stakeholders are going to get benefited. The third law, which has been amended, is very simple, saying that yes, the government will not unnecessarily disturb the market by putting the stock limits. Now, the critics say that it is going to give rise to the hoarding, and then the beneficiaries will be big corporates, and since they have a deep pockets, and nothing will happen as far as farmers are concerned, and the consumers will also have the brunt of such kind of a legislation. The government on the other side says that no, it is not there. It has always been, since 1954, government has been very conscious about such kind of limits being put up. Only thing it says that yes, it is not do unnecessarily. Mr. Ashish Barwale has already given their exceptions in which the government has reserved the right to interfere into the market. And obviously, anything which is going to be non-beneficial to the farmers and also to consumers, in a democracy, there is no government which will keep their eyes closed. The laws are never written on in such a manner that they cannot be revised and they cannot be amended. The experience will show how we move forward. So the point is, do we wait for farmers to get themselves accustomed to new dynamics without the farm laws being implemented first, or it should be a process which works together? The answer comes from Bihar. In Bihar, when the APMCs were abolished and outside market was not developed, yes, it has created problems for the farmers. So obviously, the government has come up with a via media that your present option continues, but at the same time, the new options are being tried and the choice is yours. Now, this is the kind of freedom which has been provided to all kinds of the farming community and the other stakeholders which are there. The whole debate has gone into farmers versus corporates. While the market players are multiple, there are farmers and farmers organizations, there are going to be the technology providers, there are infrastructure providers, logistic providers, the processors, retailers, exporters, and of course few corporates. Now they will have to compete with all others. In a competitive market, the theory of Adam Smith always applies, but in any case, the market imperfections, government is always there. Now, government is not withdrawing. Government is going to be a kind of a fair arbitrator when the farmers are interacting with the market. And I fully support such kind of farm laws. Obviously, the result will be any of the two. It could be a great change as far as marketing is concerned and shape in a manner which is beneficial to all the stakeholders. It could be other way around, provided if all the stakeholders really work together for next 5 to 10 years. There is an agri-infrastructure fund for 1 lakh crores. There are 10,000 FPOs which are to be formed, 10,000 crore fund for having a kind of a farmers micro enterprises. There are a number of schemes which have to be brought together in a converging manner. If the convergence platform is created around such kind of farm laws, I'm sure that the shaping of the market will be in a way where all the stakeholders, particularly the farmers, will be better off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Goyal Saab. As Ashish mentioned, Dr. Goyal is one of the most respected government officials in Maharashtra, who retired as Agriculture Secretary, Chief Agriculture Secretary. In fact, he has a huge experience of policy formulation as well as implementing the policy. So we can't have anybody better than him to talk about these new reforms. Thanks so much for your views, Dr. Goyal Saab. Can we request Govind Joshi to speak about his thoughts on these farm reforms? As Ashish said, he's from Shetkari Sangatna. He represents very progressive farmers' views. Joshi Saab.
Okay, Subharata. Thank you, Radha Subbarao-ji. At the very beginning, I think I should now go for the best of my previous speakers. They already have given in detail what are the laws, and they describe the motive of the government and the law, backed by the laws. At the very beginning, I would like to let you know about the role and the principal stand Shetkari Sangatna in farmers' movement. Since its inception, Shetkari Sangatna, founded by Honorable Sharad Joshi, has been stubbornly agitating for the freedom of the farmers. Sharad Joshi appropriately recognized the central and the most essential fact that the Indian agriculture suffers not only from the caprices of nature, but more gravely and severely from the tyranny of governmental interventions. The interventions aimed at depressing the prices of agricultural commodities in view of maintaining low-cost economy, protecting consumers' interest, keeping the prices of wage goods and raw material low to promote the industrial growth, but surprisingly at the cost of none else than the farmer. Hence, agriculture still continues to be a losing proposition. The instruments of the intervention that the government of India uses are simple but very lethal. Unfortunately, most of the farmer leaders leading this agitation deliberately refuse to recognize the fact that the way to improve farmers' price realization at the first instance is to liberate agriculture from the various controls. They still want to retain an environment in which government uses a whole armory of instruments such as banning export and dumping of foreign agriculture produce in India, as also restricting the movement, storage, processing, and marketing of farm produce within the domestic market. The government that succeeded the British rulers after independence designed the ways and means and framed the laws to legally support its anti-farmer policies. In post-independence history of India, no political party except Swatantra Party of Rajagopalachari manifested displeasure over the ill deeds of government against the farmers. And incidentally or hence, it was not unexpected that none of the subsequent governments over last 7 decades ever had intended to put an end to the immoral but legal power it has been building for 7 decades now. It was after a long spell of 70 years that this government brought in some modification in the existing Essential Commodity Act, relaxing restrictions on stocking of agricultural produce, and introduced 2 new laws relaxing restrictions governing purchase and sale of farm produce, and a dedicated legislation to enable contract farming based on written agreements. It is universally acknowledged the fact that the prices of farm produce in India are not allowed to be decided by the forces of supply and demand. The policy of low-cost economy resulted in a situation where the agriculture prices do not cover even the cost of production, where there is no post-harvest link between the farm and the kitchen, and the markets are dominated by a long chain of intermediaries. The system of APMCs has done nothing to remedy this situation. It has failed to ensure system of standardization, grading, weighment, and timely payment. Hence, it was very essential to curtail and prune the legal power or the jurisdiction of the APMCs being exercised outside their market yards. The large variation across the states in the scope and stringency of these APMC acts has led to fragmented markets that have impeded the emergence of a emergence of a single national market. New markets or marketing system emerging outside the APMC shall remove such impediments and lacunas. Transparent and intervention-free markets shall also encourage reliable future markets of which the farmers are the main beneficiaries. This is rather a first step taken by this government on the way towards farmers' freedom. However, government's move doesn't suffice or is not adequate for achieving the absolute freedom of farmers, a principal demand of late Sharad Joshi and Shetkari Sangatna. But at least a step forward in the desired direction has been taken by this government, which deserves some good appreciation. It is high time now that the government abolishes all restrictive and monopoly regimes predominantly supported and aided by a draconian act like Essential Commodities Act. As I said earlier, this essential commodity, why it is described as draconian, is that it is seen as a thwarting private investment in post-harvest storage, warehousing, and processing, especially because these controls are implemented somewhat arbitrarily. My previous speakers also spoke about this thing. Historically, ECA-related restrictions have been neither predictable nor infrequent. And since restrictions are imposed temporarily, typically for 6 months or a year at a time, the uncertainty thus created hinders operations of agribusinesses, logistics firms, and traders alike. According to the amendments made in ECA Act, the government, but this reservation I would like to mention, that according to the present amendments that the ECA Act, in the ECA Act the government has made, the government can impose a form of restriction only in exceptional circumstances. Such kind of legal provision allowing the government to intervene in or interfere in the market renders the amendment meaningless, I would like to mention. This reform needs to be followed up with a stable policy on exports, unlike the present start-stop policy, under which union exports were recently banned. This is why the farmers hanker after the MSPs, it should be understood. It is also needed essentially to abolish all land-related acts and laws like Maximum Landholding Act, Tenancy Act, etc., which restrain farmers from entering into contract with the other parties and accomplishing the real benefits, even from the newly introduced contract farming laws, and also from expanding the land area for enhancing the scale of farm operations. Farmers also demanded since long to remove the hurdles in their free access to all the technologies, especially genetically modified seeds. The technology being used widely by their counterparts around the world. The lands can become more productive by use of scientific methods and or by infusion of capital and technology. Majority of the farmers, as I told earlier, they are holding small and unviable pieces of land. However, they don't have money to pay for the technologies or the, improving the size of the scale of their farming. Nor does the government. Hence, the next reform should give farmers freedom to lease their lands to agri-professionals with capital and technology and become in turn shareholders. I go a step forward. Shareholders and workers on the same land are setting the stage to make forward contracts, transferring their risk to businessmen, leading hopefully to a freedom to lease unviable lands for a job and share in profit. In fact, the reforms may or should provide an opportunity for those willing not to stay in farming to exit with better considerations of their lands, and also opportunity for new entrants willing to enter this vocation. Clearly, there must be some way by which those who find themselves trapped in agriculture are offered an escape route, giving way to those who feel confident of tackling the more technical and mechanized cultivation system. What is needed is the setting up of an active and efficient land market that can bring about liberalization in the farm sector and ensure freedom of the entry and exit. Unlike other farm organizations, I would like to mention here that the one essential precondition of smooth revolution in agriculture is to facilitate the exit of one class and the entry of another by the challenges of this new era. Despite there being abundant lacunas and deficiencies which could be discussed some other time, with the hopes and anticipating that the government shall gradually take in near future the steps forward or further required and desired to reach the ultimate goal of absolute or complete freedom for the farmers and also the related enterprises. Shetkari Sangatna welcomes the farm laws recently enacted by the government. Thank you, Radha.
Thank you, Joshi Saab. Nice to hear from you about very progressive views of Shetkari Sangatna. It's very heartening to note that you're looking for more liberalized policies than what we have already seen in the last few months. Thanks so much. I'm sure we would like to hear more about your views as we discuss the concerns. We would like to request Yogesh Ji, the chairman of Maharashtra FPC, the Maha FPC, to share his thoughts. Yogesh Ji represents FPOs, the Farmer Producers Organization. As Dr. Sudhir Goyal mentioned, FPOs are going to be extremely important in these agri reforms being effective. So he represents particularly the smallholder farmers. I'm sure his views will be very interesting to hear. Yogesh Ji, please.
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, I'm thankful to Ashish Ji for inviting me for this webinar. And again, this is great opportunity to learn from my mentors, SK Goyal Saab and Chandrasekhar Sir and entire team. So where Dr. Goyal stopped, I will start from there. He made a very crucial point that stakeholders need to press very hardly for successful implementation of these acts. And even today, there was a hearing of a petition in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court made very crucial remarks. So we are now in the question mark whether what is going to happen, yes or no. So one point made by Attorney General in today's hearing is very important. He made that if it is not going to happen, then what is the future of 2,000 farmers who made the contracts with the different corporates? So I think this is a very weakening side of the present acts, because corporates and farmers are not on the same page, and everybody is looking into the silos, and nobody is coming in synergetic way to give strength to these reforms. And I think whatever points Dr. Goyal made, those points are very, very valid. As a intellectual economy of the agriculture, or even corporate lobby, or even progressive farmers lobby, everybody is welcoming the acts. But coming to the implementation side, a lot of lacunas are there, and a lot of mismatch are there. So there is great opportunity for all the stakeholders. If we have to go ahead, then we have to partner together. And if we are partnering together for the implementation of both three acts, then I think there will be a great outcome of entire ecosystem. Firstly, coming to the point of farm produce trade and commerce, yes, it is giving opportunity to set up markets or marketing facilities or infrastructure or entire marketing ecosystem outside the boundaries of the mandi. But unfortunately, and Dr. Goyal is the architecture of reforms in the state of Maharashtra, and again he said that at that time government was very, very proactive. Definitely, in case of the reforms, government is always proactive. But in the state of Maharashtra, reforms happened not only through the proactiveness of the government, but there was response from all the stakeholders, and that was need of the stakeholders. Even implementing wing was with the government side, and that's why it was quite easier. But unfortunately, over a period of time, even in case of the outside mandi or outside boundaries of the mandi, facilitation was done in the state of Maharashtra. But if we are looking the numbers of the private markets emerge outside the mandi, that number is quite less. So around 50 markets emerge against the 350 plus agriculture produce market committees. So what is the missing link? Corporates are not coming and they are not investing in the agriculture marketing infrastructure. So if that is the case, and if these new opportunities are coming, then again corporates are going back, and that was the statement even from the Reliance Industry Group, that they are not going to enter into the procurement of the commodities. So I think yes, if we are talking about reforms, then it is the responsibility of all the stakeholders, and we need to identify the areas of partnership with different stakeholders, because corporates are not enemy of the farmers, and farmers are not considering corporates as the enemy. But why this antagonist view is coming? Because the perception made among these two different stakeholders is completely wrong, and we have to change that perception. And that's why there is a strong communication and connecting link is required between farmers and corporates. So coming to again opportunities explored by first act. Firstly, there is opportunity for setting up private mandis outside the market yard. Secondly, there is opportunities for partnering with the farmer organizations, directly with the individual farmers, but good opportunities there. Farmers are aggregating into the farmer producer company, and comparatively Maharashtra is the progressive state wherein 1800 plus farmer producer companies has been found. But farmer producer, now again we are talking how many active organizations are there. Definitely number of the active organization is less, but we have strong and robust institutional framework for the partnering with these institutions which are registered under the Company Act. Now for the procurement and purchasing outside the mandis, if corporates are joining hands with these organizations, then procurement centers can be run. And we identified that opportunity, and we implemented that in case of the soybean commodity. So now we are running the procurement centers. We partnered with ADM in Latur region and some local solvent extraction plants, and we are supplying commodities to them. Even in case of the Hingoli and Kalmunuri area, Goda Farm Farmer Producer Company, they had opened a lot of procurement centers. So idea is that if we are bringing markets at the farmers' doorstep, then farmers are going to support the initiative taken by the corporates. Otherwise, just we are setting up our own framework and own silos and looking that farmers will come to us, that will not happen. So participatory approach is quite important for successful of these Farm Act. Secondly, in case of the contract farming and contracts and farm services, a lot of opportunities has been unlocked for various partnering for the various services, and those services include backward services as well as the forward services. And even opportunities has been given for entering into the corporate farming also, because earlier that was quite challenging. There was no clarity, but now there is more clarity, and there is provision for the season specific agreements to short term agreements and long term agreements up to 3 to 5 years. So I think that is crucial for securing investment from season specific to some long duration specific, if any corporates are coming forward for the backward linkages. Simultaneously, integration has been made with between various farm services. That means it is now not only dependent on some specific services, but now it will come to the insurance sector, it will come to the value chain financing sector. So I think lot has been there, but now it is up to stakeholders how they are exploring the opportunities and coming forward to see the impact on the field. And thirdly, in case of even Essential Commodity Act also, Essential Commodity Act, and even that was one of the factor wherein confidence of the stakeholders or particularly farmers from Maharashtra was loosened and weakened, and that was the reason for a ban of export of onion. But I think yeah, these are the we are living in the political economy, and we have to accept the balance or stabilization between consumers and the farmers. So I think, but there is more clarity right now. when those acts should be used. Earlier, that was the perception of somebody else, but now at least there is some quantification for imposing such bans. So I think there are a lot of opportunities has been unlocked, and definitely these are the reforms like 91 reforms, and unfortunately again loss of the partnering between all value chain stakeholder is the alarming situation for successful implementation of this act. So I think summing up my point, I would like to request, because IMC is there, and thankful to Chamber also for taking various initiatives and connecting these farmers to the corporates and the entire agricultural team, particularly Ashish ji and Dr. Goyal, Dr. Chandrasekhar. The entire team is taking strenuous efforts to connect the farmers to the corporates. But I think there is need to have again 3 core areas where partnering can happen. Firstly, we need to invest into the value chain, that is for the infrastructure development, that is for the value chain financing, that is for a lot of services associated with the value chain. Secondly, we need to partner for the technology management, because we are in the era of technology. So how we can improve the systems through technological interventions like AI in agriculture, market pricing, and lot more services we have to integrate with the technological front. And thirdly, we need to partnering through some institutional arrangements. So corporates should come forward to form joint ventures with the farmers. Corporates should invest through public-private partnership, and I think that is the way forward to make the Farm Acts successful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yogesh ji. I think your views that these reforms are 1991 moments of industry reforms is a great statement. I think your point that successful implementation of these will require a certain amount of further work, I think also need to be noted. I'm sure we'll hear more from Yogesh ji regarding some of the improvement that we need in the current reforms as we go along when we discuss the concerns that we have. I would request now Chandrasekhar ji, as Ashish said, Chandrasekhar ji is one of those most respected agricultural policy expert and commodity market commentator. He is extremely well known amongst policymakers as well as the agriculturists, as well as various platforms across the world. We would request his views on these reforms.
Thank you, Subbarao, for the very kind introduction. It's a privilege for me to be sharing, be a part of this panel, very enlightened panel, and I had the benefit and the privilege of hearing out Dr. Goyal, Yogesh Thorat, and of course Govinda Joshi. And I was particularly touched when I saw the photo of my friend Sarad Joshi behind Govinda Joshi. Let me just take 1 minute. Very dear friend for very long years, Sharad Joshi used to write for our paper, the Hindu Business Line. Sharad ji and I have shared platforms in different parts of India. And the last one was in 2011 for an IFPRI conference in Delhi, which is where he actually fell down the stairs, and then anyway, all that, he succumbed to that. So I have anyway, kya kare? Such is life. Welcome, Govinda Joshi. Okay, now after hearing 3 experts speakers talk on the farm laws, Mr. Moderator, I want to be a little mischievous. Can I take a contrarian view? Will you allow me?
Please go ahead and also share.
All right. Okay. No, I'll be constructive. I'll be constructive, but I want to take a contrarian view. To start with, I'll talk about the law, and we will then go into the specifics, the weaknesses of each one of these laws. And there are weaknesses. Let us not show those weaknesses under the carpet. There is the case for amending all this. I'm looking at it. One, yes, Indian agriculture certainly deserves very, very progressive reforms. There is no doubt at all. And that is why these three agriculture market reform laws have been passed. But unfortunately, they have evoked mixed response. And there are misapprehensions, there are fears in the minds of sections of farmers which need to be allayed, which is extremely important. And therefore there is possibly a case for a review of every provision of the three laws, so that the apprehensions, whether the apprehensions are real or imagined, need to be allayed in the minds of the stakeholders. That is important. We need to build enough safeguards, particularly for the farmers who are, by and large, we believe they are all vulnerable people. And importantly, it is necessary to win the confidence and trust of the farming community. I am actually reminded of a poem we studied in school called The Deserted Village, which is written by Oliver Goldsmith. And there is a very telling line which I want to mention. It says, a bold peasantry, the country's pride, when once destroyed, can never be supplied. Our peasantry are very bold people. They are the country's pride. And if we hurt the innate pride of a farmer by doing whatever we do, including passing some laws, I think that the hurting of the pride, once that pride is destroyed, can never be supplied. It will be very difficult to resurrect the pride in the farmer once laws are shoved on his throat. Okay, number one, without consultation. But let me come to very specifics. I would have expected any major reform anywhere should be preceded by prior stakeholder consultation. In this case, there has been no prior stakeholder consultation. It is not, I don't know. I mean, I would think possibly the government thinks we know everything. We know what is good for the farmers, and therefore we are passing these laws. This is not a very happy situation. Second, all of us know agriculture is a state subject under the Constitution. Therefore, it would have made sense to take the state governments on board. We should have prior stakeholder consultation ought to have been done. Their views should have been taken. The second alternative for the central government was take the state list under the Constitution, agriculture in the state list, to the concurrent list. Once that is done through the parliament, then the center can legislate. The states cannot challenge. Okay. And therefore, this was the second option which was available. The third one, therefore, the third one is the way these laws were passed goes against the spirit of a federal, a cooperative federalism. After all, India is a country with many states, and there is what is called cooperative federalism. I think therefore this has not gone well with the states. States are upset. Quite apart from what the farmers feel, states actually are quite upset. And in our country, agriculture is a livelihood. In the United States, agriculture is agribusiness. In India, it is livelihood. And therefore, we must be, any law that is passed for reforming agriculture market must be sensitive to the fact that these are livelihood issues which have to be dealt with very soft gloves. Let me put it this way. Therefore, these laws would actually marketize agriculture over a period of time. And after that, once agriculture is marketized, there'll be financialization of the agriculture markets. And these are not my thought. These are not somebody's fancy ideas. These are very real, genuine concerns of people. Marketization of agriculture and financialization of agriculture. And these are typical for many of the developed economies. I don't know how many of the participants here remember what happened in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, when we had a huge spike in crude oil prices. We had drought in different parts of the world, and the FAO came up with reports of the perils of marketizing agriculture and financializing agriculture. This is what probably we are seeking. Our primary objective is to first lift farmers out of poverty. That should be our primary objective, and which will be possible not merely with these 3 agri-market reforms. They are good. There is no doubt at all. These agri-market reforms are necessary. I'm not against them. I'm only concerned about the way they were passed. But that, even keep that aside. What is important is that we need to address the structural problems of Indian agriculture. Without addressing these basic structural problems of Indian agriculture, these market reforms or marketing reforms will not be able to deliver much. I think we need to remember that. What those structural reforms, maybe in the next round of question and answer, I can talk about. Without these structural reforms, we may not be able to lift a vast majority of farmers from out of current low incomes. So, do I have another 5-7 minutes? Then I want to very quickly talk about 1 or 2 of these laws. I have only 2 laws to comment about. One is One Nation, One Agri Market. Great move. All movement restrictions, etc., on agriculture commodities have been removed, and this is excellent. Removal of interstate restrictions, movement restriction in particular, is very good. But what about intrastate restriction? After all, intrastate restriction is imposed by the state government. And by removing that, willy-nilly, this law is actually encroaching on the states and on the state subject. And this is something I wrote about this when it was proposed by the FM in the month of May. And then the ordinance came sometime early June, and the laws were passed. I have continually commented and pointed out all this. And therefore, this is where I would want to take the cue from GST. How GST happened, One Nation, One Tax. All the states were involved in consultation. And therefore, for me, agri-marketing laws should have become a GST moment for this country. And because it is not, and it has been just thrust on people, there's a huge amount of unrest, mental unrest amongst people. Second is on private markets. There is today no regulation on private markets. Every market must have regulation. Why does a stock market have a regulator? Why does insurance have a regulator? Why commodity exchanges, commodity markets have a regulator? Why banks have a regulator in the Reserve Bank of India? If there is a market, there must be a regulator. Otherwise, it will become a huge risk of what should I say? I don't know. Huge risk of activities which may not be in the interest of the farmers and which may not even be in national interest. And therefore, lack of regulation is a big weakness as far as the private markets are concerned. The center, APMC, look at APMC market. I would have expected the center should have warned all the states, saying, I'll give you 2 years, I'll give you 3 years to reform the APMC market, depoliticize them, build efficiency, use technology. And if you don't do it in 2 years or 3 years, whatever timeline, then we'll be forced to create alternate markets like the private market. I think no such warning was given. No such. The states were never taken into confidence at all. One more point is on contract farming. Yes, great idea. I have done contract farming. I was probably the first person in the country to undertake contract farming in cotton in the private sector, way back in 2002, 2003 in Tamil Nadu. For I know what I'm talking about. I know what me and my friends went through, and therefore, what is important is the trust between the entrepreneur and the group of farmers, and that trust cannot be built with a piece of paper called the agreement. Trust happens over a period of time, based on the behavior of the entrepreneur and of the farmer. That is where I come to the dispute resolution part. District administration is completely ill-equipped to deal with this kind of dispute resolution. There has to be a very separate mechanism. Courts may take their time. District administration is ill-equipped. For we need a separate mechanism for adjudication and dispute resolution as far as contract farming is concerned. I think I'll stop here. I have a lot of comments to make on MSP and procurement, etc. But I think for the moment, let me stop here. But let me also mention these reforms are reforms properly to benefit the growers. Just by announcing a law, growers are not going to derive a benefit. I think we need to ensure that these laws are fully implemented and implemented properly and progressively, so that the agriculture markets are reformed. I'll stop here for the moment, but I can come back with more points in the second round of discussion. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Chandrasekhar. I think all of us agree that these reforms are good and they have to be successful. Some of us have thoughts about what needs to be done to make them successful. One of the things that you said is that we need to carry along all the stakeholders. I think that's a very important point, that we need to consult the states and obviously all other stakeholders. But there is also a view that this subject has been discussed for the last 2 decades, in fact, since Vajpayee's government, and some of the farmers associations have demanded in the past that these reforms are needed. And of course, some of the political parties also in the past have put their, put this point as a, one of the points of agenda in their manifestos. Probably it's good to ask Dr. Goyal Saab, who is very experienced, as to, was there adequate consultation? Do we need more consultation than what has been done so far?
Subramanian, if you don't mind, just give me half a minute, Dr. Saab. Let me tell you, when these laws were passed in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha end of September, early October, I wrote a commentary, an opinion piece, saying that, yes, these bills have now become laws, but let the government not sit tight on it very smugly, saying the qaida bhi ban gaya hai and nothing more to be done. I said, you should have done prior stakeholder consultation, but do at least post facto stakeholder consultation. I think that my piece, my article is in the Hindu Business Line either on the 10th or 11th of October. As early as that, I had mentioned that I think, and therefore post facto consultation should have been done. And I even said it devolves on Prime Minister Modi to actually take the initiative and get the states to start discussing. Anyway, I just thought I'll mention that. But Dr. Goyal, sir.
Dr. Goyalji, can you please share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, very controversial point Dr. Chandrasekhar has raised. Reforms have a history of 20 years. Shankarlal Guru Committee was the first committee. 2003, the Model Act came from Dr. K.M. Sahani, Additional Secretary, Government of India, circulated amongst the states. States started amendments in their APMC acts and half-heartedly continued to do it. 16 of the states have done it, but not fully. The Contract Farming Model Act also came in 2017, circulated amongst all the states. There was a committee of the agriculture ministers of 10 states, which was formed in the year 2012. And they continued to work on it for 1.5 years and submitted a report that this is how the reforms needs to be taken forward. So there has been a very lengthy consultation going on for more than 20 years. The point is that whether these reforms are the result of this consultation or not. Now, if the states were serious about the reforms, when the Model Act was given to them in 2003 during the time of the previous BJP government, and it was continued from 2004 to 2014 with UPA 1 and UPA 2. In fact, the then agriculture minister took a conference in Bangalore and had all all the agriculture ministers and marketing ministers of the entire country and saying that these are the reforms, and these reforms are not different from what was being circulated. Now, that is one thing, that whether the consultation was there or not. The point is that if these consultations which have already taken place, there is a way to always go around implementation of certain reforms over a period of time, and there is nothing which comes as a perfect solution to begin with. Now there are always imperfections, and there are, even our constitution has been amended more than 100 times. Now this is something which somewhere is to start. The point which I had made in my earlier comments was, do we wait for endlessly that the entire community of the farmers, the stakeholders agree to what is being suggested, or do we start somewhere and where we are continuing the current system? Current system is not getting abolished. Current system will not go to a kind of a very weak situation over just a period of half a year or 1 year. Neither the farmers are going to get distressed by such kind of a thing. I fully agree that marketing reforms is a part of the value chain. Value chain consists of the entire operations which start from the preparation of land and ends up to the consumption by the consumers. Marketing comes in between. So it is not a panacea of all evils. What I would suggest that there should be an agri investment promotion boards in the center as well as states, where very well documented projects are implemented for value chain, localized, regional, national, and all the stakeholders come together. The government schemes are also connected with that, so that these reforms, which are the lubricant of that kind of an association, starts working, where all the stakeholders put their strength on the table, and in the interest of the farmers and the consumers, the entire value chain works. It is possible. So I would, the short answer to your question is yes, there was consultation. It is a complete afterthought that the consultations did not take place, and since there is an agitation in a section of the farming community, a part of the intelligentsia have started talking about that whether the consultation was adequate or not. Probably the most important consultation is Parliament. What is being doubted is that the way it was passed in Rajya Sabha. Now that is something which is being questioned, and I would not like to comment on the manner in which the reforms law have been passed in the Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Goel Sahab. I think your point is very valid, that there has been discussion on that. May not be, specifically talking about the language of the, the reform laws, but the subject has been in discussion for the last couple of decades. Of course, there is always a view that, it could have been more elaborate than what has it been, more pointed than what it has been. But as Chandrasekhar ji pointed out, it has already been, passed now, and probably these kinds of discussions will help us to look at what needs to be improved. And as you said rightly, that amendments are always possible, and we need to work on that. One of the biggest concerns that are raised by some sections of the farmers is their concern about MSP. There is a regime of MSP which is helping some of the farmers in some states, like say Punjab and Haryana in particular. And there is a worry, the concern that these reforms would, in the long run, hurt their interest in the form of MSP being stopped. So how do we address this concern? Probably I could request once again Goel Sahab to talk on this. Then probably I will come to other panelists also about their thoughts.
Yeah, MSP is being declared for 23 crops. If you see the entire production of these 23 crops, the 6% of the entire produce is procured. It is only wheat and rice which is procured 30-35%. Rest of the the procurements are minuscule in terms of pulses, in terms of oil seeds, in terms of a little bit of cotton, and entirely the quantum has gone up from 6% in the UPA government to now 11% in the present government. Now, the MSP is something which is providing a kind of a benchmark to the market. 17 lakh crores will be required to have the complete procurement operations of 23 crops, which no government in its sense can ever do it. And that is why MSP cannot be a solution for all the agricultural ills which are being faced in this society. My humble submission would be the solution is to allay the kind of comments which have come up from the farmers to say that whatever is being done, say in last 5 years, and whatever is the average procurement of any of those commodities in last 5 years will continue in case the market rates are below MSP. Now that will assure them that the government is not withdrawing to the market to the extent they have been in the market. Obviously, to ask government to enter into the market much more than that in terms of a very heavy cost to the exchequer, which all of us will have to pay, is not the right solution. The right solution is to make the market work and market work in such a manner that all the stakeholders get satisfaction, including the taxpayer.
Thank you, Goel Saab. Yeah, I think it's reassuring that MSP regime will continue, and you being a very seasoned government policy maker know that this is something which cannot be discontinued. It should continue. It will continue. There are a large number of farmers who are not availing who are not accessing MSP, let's say, who are not accessing the market based on the MSP. Probably we have Govind Joshi ji, who could talk more about it as to how MSP can help, or is that something which is important for us to rely on for these reforms to succeed? Joshi ji?
Our stern stand is that now the farmers should be convinced to say it's a high time, goodbye to MSP regime. It's not going to stay long. Some farmers and the rice and wheat growing farmers, they are pushing. But some 8 to 10 years ago, 2008 or even 2010, this rice and this wheat farmers also, they were not getting MSP rates. They had to sell that time to the government procurement. I mean the schemes. I mean at the MSP, and the MSP was very low. That time they were agitating for the increasing the MSPs, or allowing them to sell outside the market. The Punjab farmers themselves, you can see, I can send you the photographs of their agitations that time. And now certainly because the last few years, the MSP has rather been more than the international market prices. They are not able to fetch those prices in open market. See, but the MSP cannot be a solution, a long-term solution. There are a lot of, the complications, and this MSP gives birth to a lot of complications and the corruptions. Say, for example, now the cotton is procured by CCI here in Maharashtra. Now they are procuring at the MSP level, but in fact, the prices of this cotton compared to the yarn that is being sold in the market, the farmer should get 7,000 rupees a quintal, whereas they are selling at the 5,500 rupees a quintal or even below. What CCI will do? CCI will rather procure all sort of this cotton at the lower rate and then sell all their final produce at the higher prices and booking their profits. This cannot ever stand in any monopoly procurement scheme, be it a CCI or MSP or anything. It cannot ever be in favor of the farmer, and even overall the long term in the favor of the nation, I would say.
Thank you, Govind Joshi ji. Yeah, I think it's a, you would like the market to really determine the prices, the demand
Yeah.
determine the prices. It's in the long-term interest of the farmers as well as the consumers. It's something which is extremely progressive view. At the same time, there are people who talk about, MSP should be declared on all commodities, and it should be government should procure at MSP for all commodities. I would like to request Chandrasekhar ji to throw light on what do you say about such kind of a demand?
Before I say anything, let me, I don't remember whether I did this in my first round of talk, a disclaimer. All that I'm speaking today in this event are all my personal views. These do not reflect the views of any organization I'm associated with, certainly, including, of course, the chamber. Okay, I want to make it very clear, my private views. Okay, that's number one. You're talking about MSP for all the crops. Because as someone who's been tracking this for decades, I know the way MSP is calculated, the way MSP is announced, itself needs a thorough review. And therefore, MSP does not reflect the market realities. MSP actually reflects somebody thinking within the Agriculture Ministry or within the Government of India that farmer must get so and so price for his produce. And then there is a calculation, labor cost, input cost, inflation, all that is taken into account, and a price is arrived. But in fact, I have spoken in conferences of the Reserve Bank of India, conferences of SEBI, and several other governmental institutions on MSP, that we need to first review the way MSP is calculated. That is one. MSP must be more tuned to the market realities, taking into account global market conditions and the domestic market conditions. Number one. Number two, I have believed, and I have on record, that I view MSP as a sovereign guarantee issued by the Government of India. When the Government of India says minimum support price for wheat is 1,975 rupees a quintal, that's a guarantee the Government of India gives to farmer, saying, boss, you produce, and if the price goes below that, we will procure. And if the price goes above that, the farmer is free to sell. It is called an options contract. By announcing MSP on 23 crops, the government has actually provided an options contract to the farmer, saying if prices were to fall below the MSP, the government will buy, and if the prices were to stay above MSP, farmers are free to sell in the open market. Take the case of chana, for example, or pulses generally over the last 2 or 3 years. 50% below the MSP, 20-30% below the MSP has been the rate. Some procurement has taken place, but it has not reached all the farmers. So the MSP procurement mechanism, but for 2 or 3 states, is completely inadequate, and then therefore we need to review, we need to revisit the very rationale of MSP. That's number one. Number two, at this point of time, in my view, this country is still not ready, given the socio-economic conditions of this country and the lot of the farmers, that we should completely dismantle the minimum support price regime. I think the MSP regime may have to continue for some more time until at least the fortunes of a very large number of farmers is lifted through several policy initiatives, including addressing the structural weaknesses of Indian agriculture. Unless we address the structural weaknesses of Indian agriculture, whether it is input delivery system or irrigation or rural infrastructure or infusion of technology or capacity building amongst farmers, risk management, stepping up public investment in agriculture, all this has to happen. Only when all these happen will agriculture get strengthened. And when agriculture strengthens and farmers start to receive better prices, market-driven prices, these farm reforms, the agri-market reforms will have a much greater impact. They will deliver much better, much more remunerative prices to farmers. For we need to visit this completely holistically, merely by passing 3 laws. Yes, these laws are required, good, but that's not going to solve our problem. That is the point. And we need to get end-to-end solutions in place, which is where consultation with all the states will have to come.
I think what you're saying is that we need to have more work than what has been done so far. These 3 years, but then not enough. We need to have some more, actions from the government to make sure that structural reforms are also brought in. Point noted. I think it's a very good suggestion. There is another concern that is voiced by some of the farmers is this, that when you allow private sector to also come in and private markets to come in, the current APMCs will have a situation where the volume of business will go down and the revenue will therefore go down, and in the course of time they will not be able to sustain. So probably I will have to request Goel Saab as to what would he say about this.
Yeah, I think one must understand that the volumes in even today's APMC is 30 to 35% of the total agriculture produce. 1/3 of the agriculture commodities are not regulated. The remaining is something which gets distributed within APMC and outside APMC. Whatever is regulated and being handled as a trade outside APMC, on the face of it is illegal. But then it is being done in a clandestine fashion. These farm laws make it legal. These farm laws do nothing more than what was being done today as Khela Kharedi, making it legal. Now, the farmers community should understand that whatever was being done outside APMC, which was not under the APMC laws, is now being done in a way which is outside APMC, which has been now allowed to be a perfectly legal kind of a activity. And when there is a legal activity, you have more players to come into it, more organized players to come into it, and rather than having only such kind of information. That is point number 1. Point number 2. Now, in terms of revenue, let us see how the revenues have gone up and come down. Azadpur Mandi's revenue have gone up after reforms. The revenues in case of Maharashtra have come down only were 5 to 6% after the very rigorous reforms. Now it depends on how do you really attract farmers to APMCs or outside APMCs. So it is a competitive market. That is point number 2. So if you are in the competition to provide services, and those services are of the same quality or a better quality than what is being granted, and then you are starting with a huge infrastructure which the private sector is not having. Exactly. So in fact, you have an added advantage of starting a higher level of infrastructure on which you can build on. Number 3, the character of the APMCs would change with time. Because right now, if it is only the auction platform, tomorrow there has to be a grading unit, packing unit, cold storages, warehouses, and those services which the farmers need. So APMCs will have to change their character. Instead of being just a physical marketing platform, the physical marketing will go away. Digital marketing will take over. Whether you like it or not, it is moving in that direction. Physical markets will be something which of the things of the past, that you are transporting your goods to APMCs and from APMCs is going to the consumers, and it is inefficient. It will go only on a digital mode. So APMCs will have also become digital. And in terms of also, they will have to become a service provider. Once they become service providers, probably they will earn much more than what they are earning today. This is something which is not being realized. You are starting with a very high level of infrastructure. Built on that, change yourself to meet the future needs and become the harbinger. In that case, you will provide a kind of competition to the private market which they had never seen in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Goelji.
Subbarao, may I?
Yeah, please.
May I?
Yeah, couple of minutes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks. I completely agree with Dr. Goel. I've written a number of commentaries on this. A lot of people are writing off the APMCs writing obituary of the APMCs. No, APMCs have their strength, they have infrastructure, they have well-established business systems, but three things must happen. It devolves on the state government to depoliticize the agri-produce market committees. That is number one. How they would do it is another challenge, but that they need to be depoliticized. Second, we need to infuse greater transparency and efficiency in the operations of the APMC market. Third, for this greater transparency and efficiency, use technology. And therefore, state governments will have to invest monies in technology and in reforming the APMC markets and depoliticizing them. It is possible. And in some cases where APMC's turnover or whatever is a hopeless case, let APMCs be privatized. I don't see that as a problem at all. Let some of the APMCs be privatized, but tell the private buyer who buys the APMC not to start a real estate project, but he must run a market there because the infrastructure is available. And therefore, I think it's too early to talk about the demise of APMC market. There's a great opportunity for every state government. Where there is APMC, the state government must take greater interest in infusing efficiency in the APMC market. Now, private markets. Private markets will need a lot of capital. Private markets will need infrastructure. Private markets will need technology. These things are not going to happen overnight. So private markets will take time in this country to settle and discover a viable business model. And therefore, that is a lead time which the APMC markets will have to reform themselves. And therefore, I think the APMCs will not die. They are here to stay, but they need to rediscover themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar ji. I think as chamber president of the chamber mentioned it,
the character of the APMCs will not change unless they face the competition. This has to be taken into account first of all.
Absolutely. I think that's what I was coming to. Competition is good for all stakeholders. As somebody mentioned, when the insurance sector or the airline sector was open to private sector, it improved a lot of everyone, including the consumer and other stakeholders. So therefore, I think this would be a good opportunity for APMCs also to improve. Efficiency of APMC would improve. There is one concern that is raised, related to contract farming. That is, smallholder contract farmers. The farmers cannot be expected to negotiate with large corporations for contract farming, and probably the FPOs would be the way forward for that. Probably we have there's no better person than Yogesh ji, who heads all the FPOs of Maharashtra. So answer this: what do you think can be done, and how it can be done as FPOs to provide strength to smallholder farmers to negotiate with the large corporates and get good deal on contract farming?
Yeah. Before coming to this question, I will just give two comments. Firstly, there has been a lot of consultation to come this process, because Model Act is the latest version of all this consultation, and now agriculture marketing reforms is the latest step. So I think consultation is good. Secondly, in case of the MSP, I have to just make one comment. MSP, because we are the implementing agency of the MSP in the state of Maharashtra. During lockdown period, we facilitated around 1 lakh farmers. But in Kharif season, we observed that in case of the soybean commodity, in the state of Maharashtra, only 36 quintal of the commodity has been procured by central nodal agencies or state nodal agencies. So point is that MSP should be utilized as a market risk mechanism only. So it should not be a tool that can give assurance to the farmers to buy commodity by the government. So what kind of risk mitigation tool we have to use it, that is up to different stakeholder to decide. And I think government has to be a crucial role on the MSP implementation front. I think Chandrasekhar sir want to make some comment. Yeah.
if the moderator permits.
Yeah, please.
In fact, the procurement agency should be happy that there was no need for them to procure soybean, primarily because soybean prices were ruling above the minimum support price. Therefore, farmers are happy. Okay. The purpose of MSP and the purpose of procurement is to support prices. When prices fall below MSP, some agency will have to step in and start buying and support prices. And this, how does this price support work? It is you don't have to procure all the quantity. If there is a market for soybean and there are a number of solvent extraction plants that buy soybean, and if an agency like NAFED or Maha FPC wants to buy some soybean, you buy 5%, 10% of the produce. Once you start buying at MSP, you actually lift the price of the entire produce in the region.
Yeah.
And therefore, that is why procurement is important. Number two, and therefore I'll go back to Dr. Goel's statement that 17 lakh crores will be required. Sir, that is the aggregation of all the crops with MSP. That will be the 17 lakh crores. What will the private sector do if the government were to buy everything? For only a part of the agriculture produce will be procured by the government of India as a support mechanism to lift prices above the minimum support price. And therefore, this 17 lakh crores is not a number any economist would accept. But with due respect to your views. Okay, go ahead.
I think it must be taken into consideration. The procurement under MSP is made only of the superior grade, produce. Inferior grades are not procured by the, and sometimes, so for example, say this soybean, this year, superior grade, produce was only 25%, 75% of the soybean was inferior grade.
Correct. I agree.
That's why once the superior grade market is improved, the inferior grade also starts getting a better prices in the market.
Right.
It is the market related, I think, rather the issue.
Right. In English, they say a rising tide lifts all the boats.
Yeah.
Therefore, when the tide rises, it will lift the price of crop. Anyway, okay.
Good. Can we go back to the question related to FPO?
Definitely. So the point I was making that we are happy that we utilize the alternative to the MSP. We partner with different corporates and we negotiated successfully with the corporates. And now we have arrangement to work with the corporates. We are taking contracts and we are supplying commodity against those purchasing orders or the contract. So point is that if we are in the value chain, if we have collection and aggregation, we have infrastructure for the warehousing, if we have stocking of the commodities, then successfully we can deal with the corporates. Earlier problem was that before FPO, there was scattered small and marginal farmer. Right now, at least farmers are saying that, yes, we have commodity, we are stocking our commodity into warehouses. So any corporates are willing to partner with the organizations, not only for the procurement activities. Earlier, now people are understanding what these central nodal agencies are doing. Even in case of the Union, now farmers are saying that instead of selling commodity at the MSP, if we are stocking our commodity, and wherein a role of this stock limit is coming into the picture, because this is the commodity of the farmers, custodian of the farmers are there. So there is no restriction of the stocking to the farmers. So now previously trend was that supplying commodity immediately to the government. Now point is that they are understanding the market forces. During the early phase, there is low prices, and at that time, if we are making the stock, then prices are going up. So farmers now understanding the market dynamics, and accordingly they are now entering into the different value chain services to their member farmers. So in those cases, we are successfully negotiating with different corporates for selling of commodity. Simultaneously, Mahiko is the great example of the contract farming, because in the business of the seed, they are supplying foundation seed or rest of the seed material to the farmers and sourcing the commodity. I think there is no, and farmers are happy. Revolution has been made. Even in case of the milk commodity, milk is highly perishable commodity. But when we are strengthening the systems, we are setting up the supply chains and setting up the value chains, I think there is good negotiation or bargaining power to the small holders through their platforms. And I think for that purpose, farmer producer companies, which is itself branded under Company Act, and so it is now quite easy for the corporates to deal with the organization registered under the Company Act.
One thing I would like to ask, will the future trading markets be able to solve this, I mean, this problem of this price discovery mechanism, so as to the small farmers and all these concerns we are rather expressing about?
Probably Chandrasekhar ji can answer that question.
Sir, this is something I've been associated with this market for very long years, more than 20 years. You can attribute a part of the credit to me for opening up the futures, commodity futures markets in India. The point I'm making is that while commodity futures markets are good, they serve a purpose. Even in the United States, farmers don't go to the commodity futures exchange to hedge their prices, but they watch CBOT prices, Chicago Board of Trade prices, and then they sell to the elevator companies, as you know, Cargill and Bunge and ADM, etc. For in India, we need to create that culture that farmers should be able to watch the prices traded on the exchanges. But for me, the problem is the market, the number of transactions and the number of participants in India, in agriculture markets in particular, is very narrow and shallow. There are not many participants. This is the problem. Take wheat, for example. We are the world's second largest producers, 100 million tons. Sugar, we are the second largest producers, 30, 31, 32 million tons. Where is the trade in wheat and sugar on the futures platform? So there are practical issues. Yes, on paper, futures markets are a great platform for farmers to look at the way prices are likely to behave at a future point of time. But in effect, as of now, a lot more will have to happen within our country for the farmers to actually benefit from the futures market.
But the
on the other hand,
but the precondition for this commodity market to work efficiently, it is necessary the spot market to be transparent as well as invention free. Intervention free.
You said it. Without a strong, reformed, transparent spot market, we cannot have an efficient futures market. और हमारा देश में हमने spot market को reform किया नहीं. अभी तो शुरू है, अभी शुरू किया हमने. Spot markets have to be reformed, but without reforming them, we have built a superstructure for the derivatives exchanges. अभी क्या करें? This is how policies work. Completely agree. Spot markets, cash market, physical market will have to be reformed.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar ji. I think we have some more questions to ask, but then I think we are constrained by the time. As a last question from my side, I would like to request the views of all the panelists on one important point, that there are different views on how do we take it forward now. You know, there are large number of farmers who silently support the reforms, probably 80% plus. There are some sections of the farmers who are agitating against that. There is a view that probably the government can, stay the implementation for few months and conduct, as Chandrasekhar ji report, some more consultation, some more communication to allay NEPS. That's one view. The other view is that probably the central government can allow state governments who are interested to take forward these reforms to implement and see how the reforms will take shape and other states will follow. Of course, there could be many more possibilities. So we would like to request Goyal Saab to first share what would he suggest as the way forward that we need to, the government must take forward.
Yeah, I would say point number one, this is under Article 254(2) that for a concurrent subject, the states can have a state-specific amendments introduced. It has been done by Punjab, it has been done by Chhattisgarh, it has been done by Rajasthan. and they have to have the consent of the president, which means the consent of the central government. The government first should take the step of honoring all such amendments because they have come through their legislative process, and wherever it is constitutionally valid, agree to it. This will make the states understand that their views are being respected and there is a real sense of cooperative federalism. This is how it can be done. The second point which can be done is that in terms of having what is number of writ petitions which have come up before Supreme Court, there are number of a kind of PILs which have been also come up. Government may request Supreme Court, and which the process has started, but then request in a very conducive fashion that these should be heard so that the deficit of the trust which has come up in the minds of the farmers will go only by an independent kind of assessment of what has really happened. And whatever may be the outcome, that is the outcome which needs to be accepted with full grace so that this process may continue. This is second point. The third point, our parliament session is starting on 31st of or 30th or 31st of January. And normally what happens whenever there is a private member bill, the government does not allow its introduction using its majority power. But in this case, whenever there is an amendment, or even in case of anybody wants to get these bills repealed, let there be such kind of private members bill be respected. Let there be a full debate in the parliament and take a decision. For asking government after taking a step of introducing a bill, getting it passed from the parliament, and then ask the executive to stay, this is not true. Either it has to be done through the judicial process, or it has to be done on the floor of the parliament, or under the four corners of the constitution. So use Article 254 to also permit for the Supreme Court to take a view on an expeditious hearing of all the points wherever they want to do. And third, allow the parliament to be discussed there. Having said that, there are some administrative measures which can be taken. Government can immediately announce a policy saying that the government would be there as a facilitator of connecting farmers to the market. There will be localized, regional and national value chains being established through the facilitation process of the central and state governments. And in this process, these farm laws will also be used in such a manner that the farmers are benefited and there is a win-win situation for all the stakeholders. And there will be a convergence platform with all the government interventions which have been announced on this platform, so that the farmers see that the reforms are really beneficial. Over a period of next maybe in 1 year, they can see the results of such kind of a platform. I want to name this platform Agri Investment Promotion Board, and this is how they should do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Goel Saab. It's very important to successfully implement these reforms. So let's hear from Govind Joshi ji as to what needs to be done to make sure that they are successfully implemented.
As the Goel Saab had said, that until now it is economically viable, but politically unviable. Until it becomes politically also viable, we have got to wait what we can do. But a very organized group of farmers rather taking this nation to ransom on these demands. In fact, balance of the farmers of this nation, they are unorganized and their voice is not, it doesn't reach the whole lot of, even our panel doesn't know what the farmers, excluding these two states, they wish or they have the opinion with regards to these three farm bills. In fact, it's our rather very, it's a It's a very rather a sad situation that the farmers in our country, being illiterate, they are very unable to rather make a sort of decision on what to do and what to do, not to do. Their views are normally drifted by their leaders. Even in our, I had been there in Punjab and Haryana and Panipat. तो दैट टाइम हम चाहते थे कि भाई ये इन लोगों को हम जो हमारा प्रिंसिपल लाइन है शेतकरी संगठन का उनको समझा के देखें। हम बहुत सारा उनको समझाए तो अब कुछ सुनने को बहुत सारे राजी नहीं होते थे। आपके ध्यान में आएगा ये पूछे तो यार बोले हमारे पल्ले नहीं पड़ता है, हमारे मुखिया से बात करो। अभी हर जगह ये जो मुखिया है ये लीड करता ही है, बोले तो ये एजिटेशन बोलो या कुछ भी बोलो, आपको इसमें क्या करना बड़ा मुश्किल है। ये अभी तो जब तक ये पॉलिटिकली इवाइटेबल नहीं होता, जब तक कुछ बोलना मुश्किल है इस पर कि क्या करना चाहिए। थैंक यू।
So you're saying that political alignment is also very important to implement these reforms. Yeah, good point. So can we request Yogesh ji as to what would he recommend for making sure that these reforms are implemented successfully?
Yeah, Dr. Goyal mentioned about the consultation process further to go ahead. I will suggest a few actionable points to go ahead. Firstly, we have to develop the markets, either physical markets outside the boundaries of the APMC. We may call it as a farmers market, or we may call it as a private markets. And secondly, we need to set up electronic markets, that means virtual markets. And if we are setting up new marketing ecosystem to crack the monopoly of the existing APMCs, I think that should be one of the way. Secondly, we need to invest into the agriculture infrastructure, because country and state is lacking the agriculture infrastructure. Simply, if we are comparing the figures of the warehousing, in the state of Maharashtra, State Warehousing Corporation have only 17 lakh metric ton of the capacity, and which is completely inadequate infrastructure. So similarly, we need to invest for the next generation infrastructure for the value added services. And thirdly, there is need to have market integration, forward markets, spot markets, and lot of services associated with the markets also. So time has come to invest into the agriculture insurance. Time has come into investment for the value chain financing. So simultaneously, if we have to give the rationale for the reforms, then now it is the responsibility of the stakeholders to talk in the language of the economy. Now they should say that farmers, even corporates, they should say that after the act, we have established or set up the economy of the 1 lakh crore or 2 lakh crore. So if that rationale, if we are giving through actions, I think that will be the major market force to bring the reforms. I think this is the suggestion from my side.
Thank you.
With the existence of irrational controls and bans, how the stakeholders can come forward and invest in the market? I don't understand. It cannot ever be a situation for them, comfortable situation for them.
You are saying that more reforms are needed to ensure.
Yeah.
Okay.
They themselves should come forward. It's not that they should be convinced. Every stakeholder know that he is also willing to invest, but in where his investment should not go in when the governments take us some different kind of other moves, rather harming the stakeholders.
Sure. Chandrasekhar ji, your thoughts, please.
Okay, thank you. Govinda Joshi, you said farmers are illiterate. I always keep saying, शायद हमारा किसान अनपढ़ होगा मगर वो अनाड़ी नहीं है. Farmers know exactly what is in their interest. Only thing is we have not built capacity in them to get what they want, and therefore there are a lot of things that are being forced on them. Or we need to build capacity, which is very important. That is one point. What should we do from here? That's the big question. I would actually think that given this three laws, and that the matter is in the Supreme Court and there is a protest by groups of farmers. I think the government must be bold enough to talk about a comprehensive review of the entire agriculture end to end and come up with a policy after stakeholder consultation looking at the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I think it has to be very, very comprehensive, looking at the inputs, looking at agronomy, looking at output, research, investment, processing, value addition, distribution, consumption, import, export, the works. I think that is what this country needs, because all our reforms are bits and pieces. These bits and pieces reforms will always hurt somebody or the other somewhere, and therefore there'll be protests. Whereas even if we were to take the whole of 2021 for a end-to-end, to find an end-to-end solution to the challenges that the Indian agriculture faces, looking ahead next 10, 15, 20 years, what is likely to happen in this country, looking ahead, then start planning and promote research, promote investment, and have growth-oriented policies. I think that is what is the way forward. And this government has the capacity, capability, and the strength to undertake that exercise.
But Chandrasekhar sir, 40% of the young farmers, they are willing not to stay in the farming business. They don't wish to stay in this vocation.
Sir, this is not in India, it's across. No, I understand, it's across the world. Across the world, India is not an exception. Across the world, farmers in Europe, the girls in the cities are not willing to date young boys who are doing farming in the rural areas. This is a trend. We have to accept all that. And what is important also is we have too many people sitting on farm.
But the same thing I have.
Disguised unemployment. So people have to actually exit agriculture. And that will, right, sir? I think I'm sure there is a lot more to talk, but
it's another subject by itself. How do we attract?
Reduce the population dependent on farming is a very essential thing that has to be done.
I did this exercise for the World Bank in 2006, 7, 8, National Agriculture Innovation Project. We built several scenarios and found even 14 years ago that the opportunities, non-farm opportunities, at least at that time, were rather limited. But anyway.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar. I think we are reaching the limits of the time.
I think so.
I would request Rakiwala ji to propose a vote of thanks. We don't have time for Q&A from the audience, unfortunately. So,
but there's no Q&A. There are no questions. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, let me all wish you a very happy new year. I must, it's been a very, very diverse and a very, very interesting discussion among the panelists. First of all, I must like to thank Mr. Subbarao for moderating it so efficiently and so effectively.
Yeah.
Mr. Goel touched up, in his talk, he was generally gave a very balanced view of agriculture and how these farm laws are good for the country and how in a balanced way we can implement and execute these farm laws. However, Mr. Joshi, I think, touched upon, among other things, he touched upon land reform, which is very critical to agriculture, and liberalizing the agricultural policies. Mr. Thorar, I think,
Yogesh,
Mr. Yogesh Thorak, I think he referred to not working in silos. And Mr. Chandrasekhar, of course, gave a little contrarian and a very stimulating perspective of agriculture, which leads me to think that in a democracy where 40% of our people live on the farms or more, any reform touching that segment is not going to be easy. And it has to be an end-to-end reform with a clear, path laid out. You see, while we are self-reliant in agriculture, unfortunately, our farmers are not self-reliant. So I think this is something that we need to think about when we talk about Atmanirbhar, as the Prime Minister has so fondly talked about, that agriculture is self-reliant. We are a surplus producing country, but unfortunately our farmers are not self-reliant. So with this basic thought, I'd like to thank all of you for spending your valuable time with us, and the IMC Secretariat for organizing this very timely discussion on farm laws. And of course, my dear friend Ashish Barwale for having organized it under his committee. So thank you all very much and have a good day.
Thank you.
Good luck and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So much.
Let's say goodbye to each other. See you again.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Govindji, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dr. Saab, Dr. Goel, Govind Joshi, and of course Yogesh, my young friend. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you
Take
for
care,
that.
Anita. Thanks.
Thanks.
And Ashish and Subbarao, of course. Yeah, yeah. Can we leave now? May I leave?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks.
Anita.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Let's say goodbye.